Hi, I am Emily Tobar Clark, and I am examining the poem Pokeberries by Ruth Stone for my major project. I chose this poem because I connected with its themes of identity and how family and upbringing shape who we become. I've moved all across the country and never had a permanent physical home, so I really relate to family and tradition becoming your home. In my first reading, the poem felt like a series of small memories, but by reading it more deeply, I was able to see the overall theme that I really connected to. The speaker reflects on her upbringing in the Virginia mountains and the strong women in her family, which I also relate to. She shares about her grandmother, her Aunt Maud, and her mother. She also mentions her father, who she describes as a northerner, and he feels somewhat out of place in the world that she builds. The poem moves through memories of childhood and eventually shows the speaker building her own life in Vermont. Through these memories, the speaker reflects on how her background has permanently shaped her identity, like a pokeberry stain. This poem mainly uses the thematic mode, which is what I'm going to focus on. It has narrative and visual elements to it, but when you read it, you can tell that it is exploring a theme of upbringing and identity. One important moment in the poem shows how the speaker's background might be judged by others. Stone writes, "Who would want an ignorant hill girl with red hair?" This line shows how her identity can be viewed as inferior to others, and also how the speaker feels that her and her family are perceived. It reflects, unfortunately, on common stereotypes about rural communities and establishes the tension the poem explores moving forward. In the middle of the poem, Stone introduces the central metaphor when she writes, "My whole life has been stained with pokeberries." Pokeberries are toxic plants that create a really deep purple stain. It's hard to remove, and the image suggests that the speaker's upbringing has permanently marked her identity. However, However, instead of treating the stain as something negative, the poem reframes it as something meaningful and connected to home. Pokeberries have been commonly used as dye because the color is very rich and very beautiful, and that's another example of strength being valued when it's embraced. That line is followed shortly by a description of the speaker's awkwardness until she finds what she writes as a good wood burning stove. Wood burning stoves require constant tending, and the speaker seems to find herself in that work, which I think perfectly describes embracing something difficult and making it yours, which not only mirrors the strength of the pokeberry stain, but the strength of the women in her family. The poem highlights the strength of the women in her family by writing about her Aunt Maud, who is actually the only character in the whole poem that is given a name. She says she scrubbed straight through the linoleum. This almost mythologizes her strength and gives the impression that she's someone the speaker looks up to. At the end of the poem, Stone writes about her mother. She didn't just bite an apple with her big white teeth, she split it in two, which is such a powerful line. The image shows physical strength and confidence, and it also reclaims the earlier insult about the ignorant hill girl, showing the value in her mother that the speaker sees that others may have missed. It leaves you with the impression that the speaker has immense pride in her heritage. I think this poem is worth reading because it shows how identity can be shaped by family, culture, and where you're from. And it feels like a love letter to the strong woman in her life. At first, some of the speaker's background might seem like something others would judge, but the poem ultimately transforms those experiences into something to be proud of, which is something we can all learn from and relate to. That's all. Thank you for listening to my interpretation, and I hope you have a great day.